Did you know that there are entire nations and cultures that people do not even know exist? Today we will look at some of the most interesting abandoned regions on our planet, where history, nature, and culture have much to tell, but people pay very little attention to them. Let's dive in. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands. We are beginning our tour in the least populated and one of the most isolated Union territories of India, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which lie in the Bay of Bengal. These equatorial islands are still inhabited by some of the world's few isolated native populations, such as the Sentinelese people, who have successfully maintained sovereignty and pre-modern customs even today. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands are a true hotspot, with hundreds of plant and animal species endemic only to these islands and found nowhere else in the world. Densely and naturally preserved tropical forests host rare creatures, including the Nicobar pigeon, the largest pigeon in the world, and the Andaman day gecko, a brightly colored green reptile that is native to the area only. But the native people of the islands are potentially the most interesting thing about the islands. For instance, the Sentinelese people remain one of the last groups that do not allow anyone to set foot on their land, as they shoot anyone who attempts to approach with bows and arrows. The functionality of such societies can be considered a provocation for carrying out new attempts at first contact. Meanwhile, having withstood hundreds of attempts at first contact, the Sentinelese are immune to communicating with the modern world, and they continue living in ancient ways. The Wakan Corridor. Then we will be visiting the Wakan Corridor in northeastern Afghanistan, surrounded by Tajikistan to the north, Pakistan to the south, and China to the east. This otherwise very remote area has been known as the roof of the world because of the high altitude and cliffs. It is possible to stay in the homes of Kyrgyz people, a nomadic ethnic group who inherited the traditions of ancient shepherds and lived in the Wakan area for generations. Thus, the Kyrgyz people have built a rather distinctive kind of ousted pastoralism that remains midway between nomadism and sedentarism, as appropriate to the sometimes harsh terrain of the Wakan Corridor. They dwell in dome-shaped portable tents made of felt called yurts and migrate from one place to another with the cattle, including yaks, sheep, and goats, from high pastures to low pastures. The Kyrgyz people were also known for their culture and the traditions still existing to date, including eagle hunting, music, and weaving, among other crafts. However, even if Wakan is quite isolated, it has always been a commercial and cultural exchange area. There were favorable conditions for tourism in the region, which was influenced by the ancient Silk Road that connected China to the west via several countries through which goods and people were exchanged. Today, no one visits the Wakan Corridor as a tourist. However, the area remains an isolated and relatively unknown part of the world where unimaginably beautiful spots and strong-willed people still exist. The Inu of Japan. Sailing to another world, we will dive into the land of the lost civilization of the northern part of Japan that was inhabited by the Ainu people. Despite assimilation with neighboring peoples, the Ainu have their own unique language, mythology, and art, which differ from the Japanese ones. They have finely made wooden carvings, well-tailored clothes with embroidery, and good music that reflects their long-standing history. Even today, the Ainu have been suffering from the discrimination and assimilation policies of the Japanese government for several centuries. However, the Ainu group remains characterized by a rich cultural life and strong ties to the ground. They have never allowed their language and cultural practices to be washed away by the tide of time. Instead, they have continued to teach their children and fend for their culture, which is foreign to other civilized societies. Currently, Ainu are more focused on their cultural resurgence due to attempts to revive the language, regain lost territories, and popularize traditional culture. There are organizations such as the Ainu Association of Hokkaido, where efforts are being made to raise awareness of the old oppressed people through the teaching of their culture and fighting for their rights. The Maui of New Zealand. Next, we shall proceed towards the islands of New Zealand and study the Maori. The indigenous people, the Maoris, have maintained their identity and connection to the land in light of colonization and assimilation. They have unique social formations and management of natural resources, which makes their ideas useful to the rest of the world. The Maori people also put a very strong emphasis on landed property, as they believe that the land is alive and must be revered. It has also given rise to sustainable resource utilization practices such as rahui, whereby there is a temporary ban on the use of certain areas or resources to allow their replenishment. Maori are also famous for their colorful artistic culture, decorations, carving on the woods, fabrics, and dance. It is crucial to note that these are not merely ornaments, but the modes by which Maori art truly speaks, telling its history, myths, and values. Nonetheless, the Maori society has stood the pressure of colonization and assimilation by the Europeans and has remained a proud people, fighting for recognition of their rights and the recognition of their cultural values. Groups such as the Waitangi Tribunal, which was formed in 1975, have assisted the Maori in regaining rights to their land and resources, as well as demanding higher autonomy. From the isolated archipelagos of the Andaman Sea to the mountains of the Wakan Corridor, these are cultures and landscapes that do not fit comfortably into any preconceived box and are an invitation to some of the very richest forms of life. I hope you will watch this video and be motivated to search deeper into such unknown spots on the planet and the people living there. This is because when we begin to have our eyes opened to all that is out there beyond the standard benchmarks, the world is a place that is even more magical than one could have thought. Therefore, keep on wandering and gaining knowledge, and do not stop finding the lost territories. Leave your thoughts about forgotten lands below. Thanks for watching.